Now, I don't really know what is going on with the feds and the economy, but I do know something very, very strange is going on, and we need to keep our eyes open. I have a hard time fully understanding the financial markets and the banking system. I'm not going to lie. I've been reading a lot of books, listening to a lot of podcasts, listening to a lot of books on tape, doing everything that I can in order to kind of understand this behemoth that runs our lives. The central bank, the feds, the banking system in general, I think is potentially the root of all of our problems. But again, I'm reserving my takes on that and reserving doing videos on that until I can further understand it a little bit better. But I will say this about today, because I do think it's important. I think we need to keep our eyes open. But some strange activity has happened. Now, I'm sure you heard that the feds have cut the interest rates by 0.25%. And when I turn on the news, what they're talking about is, oh, the feds cut the rates again. This was, and the news says this to you. They say, oh, it's because Donald Trump is he's a goon, and he went out there and he pressured them, and he was, and the feds caved, and they're actually doing what Donald Trump says because he was bullying them, and they're blaming everything on Donald Trump right now, which, look, he very well could be partially to blame, but when it comes to the economy, it's never one person. It's always a little this, a little that, a little this, a little that, and it kind of compounds into a giant mess. So the thing that is kind of, now I was pretty alarmed when they cut the interest rates the first time a couple of months ago. The feds never do that. They never cut interest rates simply because Donald Trump bullied them. And that's what the news was 2 months ago. They cut the rates and everybody was saying, oh my gosh, they're actually caving to the president. How ridiculous is this? My thought at that time was, well, I think this shows the feds are scared. They're seeing the election. They're seeing Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. They're seeing that they're rising. They're seeing particularly Elizabeth Warren with the narratives on the news that she's doing so well. And they're really worried that if the economy were to take a slight dip, that the people, because it's usually the economy that drives people out to vote, and usually the economy that gets people to switch parties, that if the economy takes a little dip, that people would be then voting for Elizabeth Warren, and the banks are definitely afraid of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, right? So my thinking back then, 2 months ago, was, well, maybe they're doing this, and this really kind of shows they're really afraid of the progressives. They're afraid of people wanting to go in there and make change and regulate and actually bring their lucrative money-making business down. So then these last couple of days happened, and this has me more worried. Monday, what happened was the feds did an unprecedented sort of bailout in a way. They dumped a bunch of money into the market, into this system. It's a borrowing system. And what it is at the end of the night, sometimes banks find themselves a little short on money, which, that whole idea in and of itself is mind-blowing. But at the end of the day, they find themselves short of cash. Maybe they needed to pay some extra bills. They had payroll or taxes or whatever it might be. I don't know, right? They just find out that they need a little cash and they don't have it. So what they do is they go to this market. And in that market, they can borrow money for like a day. They can borrow money for a day or two, and that's it. And they're borrowing it from other banks. It's banks loaning other banks money. And they usually do it for a fairly low interest rate, 2%, 2.5%, something like this. And Monday, what happened was the banks that were finding themselves needing some money went to this market, and they discovered that the interest rates were extremely high, 4 times higher than they normally would be. They were at 10%. And this made everybody go, oh my gosh, what's going on? And usually you only raise up interest rates like this if there's a shortage of supply, right? So if fewer banks have money in that circulating system for borrowing, or if the banks are holding on to their money because they're afraid that if they lend it to you, you're going to go bankrupt and you're not going to give them the money back. Now, why would they think that? Why would they think that? Now, remember in 2008, they didn't let us in on anything. I went back today and I read some of the articles from 2008, from September 7th of 2008 in particular, when the federal government took over Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And that was the beginning of the crash, right? That was the first sign that we were headed for a real bad time. And even then, when I read all the articles I could find from the New York Times, from CNN Money, there are all these different articles, and nobody was talking about the magnitude of that situation. They were saying, okay, they did it, it's all well and good, now we can return to normal. That was the sentiment in those articles, which makes me even more alarmed for today when I see what has happened, and everybody's kind of like, well, this is just going to be fine. Nobody's talking about really potential looming doom. So what happened was the feds on Monday night saw that there was this problem where there was a shortage of cash in this little internal lending program that the banks and some corporations have with one another. It's not open to you and me. It's just for them. And so they dumped $53 billion into this, thinking, well, shoot, there's a shortage. We may be underestimated, so let's dump some money into it. And they thought, okay, good. Now, the next morning, financial analysts woke up and they said, whoa, that's weird. The feds haven't done anything like that since 2008 bailout. They don't bail out banks, but they kind of did this time. So the financial advisors or the analysts were looking at this and they were saying, this is weird. Well, it gets weirder. Then Tuesday night, after the Fed said, well, that 53, okay, it's fine. Now people were saying, well, at least it's not their max of 75 billion. So, it's up there, but it's not the max, but it's still pretty alarming because this is really different. The next night they did it again, but this time they did it at the max, 75 billion. And then today they announced that they were going to once again cut the interest rates. You only do these things, guys, if you're trying to save an economy. Now, again, the news is sitting there saying, oh, it's because Trump bullied him. The news isn't really talking about this dumping of money into this little inner lending system. Well, the feds also came out after they announced the interest rate cut. They quietly announced that they were going to dump another $75 billion into that system Thursday morning at 8:15 a.m. They're going to do it a third time. It was unprecedented for them to do it once. It's extremely unprecedented for them to do it twice. It's absolutely unprecedented for them to lower interest rates 2 months ago. The reason why that was also so shocking, because the economy is supposedly doing really well. The Feds only cut rates when the economy starts to take a dip. They cut the rates, and yet the economy wasn't seemingly dipping. So that's why I thought, wow, they're really afraid of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. But now that they're doing it again, this has me worried. And then they quietly announce that they're going to do it again, that they're going to dump another $75 billion into this inner little lending banking circuit. That's alarming, guys. So keep your eyes wide open. I don't really know what this means yet. Nobody does. I turn on CNN. I listen to the analysts talk about how they've all got speculations on what they think it is. And the bottom line is nobody knows. Nobody knows why there wasn't enough money in that inner lending situation. Why aren't the banks... they seem to have a lot of money on the books, right? Like they've been saying that they're extremely profitable. They're doing better than everybody. So where's their money? Why are they, one, needing to borrow so much money at the end of the night? And two, why is nobody having any money available to borrow at the end of the night? These are things that we should be keeping our concerns, eyes open to. This is kind of what it looked like at the beginning of the 2008 crash when things happened and the government came out and said, no, it's all fine. Don't worry. It's all good. We took over Freddie Mae and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. We took them over, all is well. We're going to get the housing market back on track. And then when Lehman Brothers collapsed, they said, well, okay, but we stopped it. And then we saw the rest. It was history. So that is what I think is kind of going on right now. This has me very worried. I don't think it will be the housing market. Some other analysts that are very, very smart, they think that it's going to be the bonds. The bond market is going to crash. And some analysts that are very, very smart say that this coming crash will be worse than the 2008 crash, that it will be more akin to what happened in 1930s. So just be careful, guys. So they didn't really fix the problem from what I can understand. Again, banking and finance, economics, it's extremely complex and difficult. And I feel like I have to study for several years before I can even effectively talk about it. So I rely heavily on what experts say. Even then, I don't understand half the stuff they say. It goes way over my head. I'm sure it goes over yours too. Don't be ashamed. Maybe I'm alone on that. Maybe I should feel ashamed. But it's very complex stuff. We don't really understand, but I do understand that these 5 events, the first time of lowering interest rates, the second time today, And then the two sort of bailouts or the dumping of money into this little lending system that they've got going on, the 53 billion, the 75 billion yesterday, and 75 billion again on Thursday. That is all very unprecedented, and we should all be a little bit worried. So thank you so much for watching. If you know what is going on and you can explain this to me kind of in a For Dummies format, I would really appreciate that. Actually, please email me. Kim@KimIverson.com is how you can reach me. I appreciate all the information I can get on this topic, quite frankly, because it is very confusing. And soon when I build out my studio, which I'm going to be doing in the next couple of months, and I can have in-studio guests or guests on Skype and whatever, I'll be talking to experts about this who can hopefully break this stuff down for us a little bit better, because it is important stuff, obviously. So thank you so much for watching.